Hi there, my name is Laura and I have a unicorn uterus. I have been doing a series of recordings so far about my unicorn uterus and the 5 pregnancies that I've had. So I've had 4 pregnancy losses and 1 rainbow baby. So with previous 2 recordings I have talked about my miscarriage and the ectopic, so now I'll talk about my live birth. So when I was first diagnosed with a unicornuate uterus, I was looking for information on ladies' experiences of it, and all I could find was medical related information and videos. So I thought I'd share my experiences so someone else might not feel so as isolated or as alone, and know that it can happen and it can be successful. So when I first found out that I was pregnant, when I saw those 2 lines on the pregnancy test, I was elated. But very quickly followed the worry and the concern of what if it happens again, what if it's ectopic, what if it's a miscarriage. So I had an early scan around about 6 weeks just to confirm its location, to confirm its heartbeat and that kind of thing. So when I went for that early scan, the sonographer had said, "Congratulations, Laura, there is a pregnancy sac, yolk sac, a fetal body, which is the baby, and heartbeat." And she confirmed it was in the left side, so the side that's connected up. And I gotta admit, I thought I'd done it, I'd made it finally. That, however, didn't quite have the desired effect that I thought it would do. There was still those creeping in worries and concerns, because I work in fertility, I'm a nurse. I couldn't help but worry about all the things that I know can go wrong in early pregnancy. So I couldn't stop myself from feeling anxious and then booking a reassurance scan. And I think between having that 6-week scan and the 12-week scan, I think I might have had 3 or 4, maybe every 2 weeks or so. What I found was that the baby was growing as they should do, and it was wonderful to be able to see that development in the early stages. So when I had my 12-week dating scan, the sonographer that did it was brilliant. She pointed out all the information to my husband, who is not medical, and printed out an image. I couldn't stop looking at the picture, and I was looking at its neck, about how long it was, and I was pointing out to my husband its nose, its chin, its little hands, its legs, and just feeling excited. But then also knowing that following that was the consultation with the doctor, as everybody gets in the UK. So I had a list going in of questions that I wanted to ask to get reassurance from them. And one of the things was that I wanted to make sure that I was going to get cervical length checks and early growth scans too. So I was relieved when she had said that this is what we're going to do, that with the cervical length checks, they would be done from about 14, maybe 16 weeks. And this is important because with a unicornuate uterus, the cervix can be shorter, and when you become pregnant and the pressure of the baby pushes down on it, it can shorten again. When I had the cervical length checking scan, the consultant that did it knew that I had a medical background, and so was very clear with all the explanations and showed me things. It was an internal scan, so a transvaginal scan, because it offers a clearer image than doing a transabdominal one, so an over the tummy scan, because the ultrasound probe is where it needs to be. So I remember the doctor saying that cervical length needed to be about 3 centimetres, and certainly no shorter than 2.5 centimetres. And much to my relief, he said it was closer to 4. And then from there, he recommended having a scan every 2 weeks from 16 to 18. And then when I had the 20-week scan, I had another one 2 weeks after that, and that was all great. It never shortened in that time, which was one of the things that had worried me the most. So fast forward to the 20-week anomaly scan. So that's the one where they check to make sure that all the baby's brain and organs are developing as they should do. That's also the scan that you can find out the gender of the baby. I did not want to know, but my husband did. So the sonographer had let him know on the promise that my husband will never tell me. Didn't work out that way, sadly. The baby was measuring a little bit behind in that he was on the 25th centile, and up until that point he was measuring just a little bit ahead. I kind of anticipated this. He was still measuring for his date, so I was quite pleased with that. So I then waited after I'd had the next cervical length scan until about 30 weeks for my growth scan. And with this growth scan, he was measuring slightly behind. It was his femur length that was shorter that put him on the 3rd centile, but it was the abdominal circumference and head circumference that kept him within the 25th centile. So to average it out, it ended up being that baby was sat on the 3rd centile. Now, I kind of anticipated this because unicornuate uteruses mean that they're about half the size that they should be, so there's less room for baby to grow. And it was a relief to know that I was going to have regular scans. One of the things that they wanted to eliminate, though, was that there was anything wrong with the placenta. So a week later I came back in again to have the blood vessels to the placenta checked to make sure they were functioning correctly. So it wasn't a scan for baby, though they did show us. And it was a relief to know that there was nothing wrong with the placenta. So I was going to have then another growth scan at about 32 weeks. And he was in breech. Now, he'd been in breech since 20 weeks. And usually there is time for baby to turn themselves between that and the full term for 37 weeks. But having a unicornuate uterus means that there's less space for them to be able to do that, so they're more likely to be stuck in breech. Not impossible, though. There are babies that can turn themselves. Just equally as someone who has a full uterus can have a breech baby, they can still turn themselves. So that was another thing they were monitoring as well, to make sure that I had the available options. So the 34-week scan, he still hadn't turned. He was still growing. He was on the 3rd centile still, but he was growing to the point that they weren't concerned that he was getting the nutrients he needed. So at the 34-week scan, they had said to me, here's some information about cesarean section. Because he's breech, there's a chance that he might need to be born this way. We don't need you to have a decision right away, and we will talk to you again in 2 weeks when you have your next growth scan at 36 weeks. And we'll go through the options then. So we were thinking about it, and again, having a medical background, knowing that there are things that can go wrong, I think we were just sort of thinking, yeah, just have the C-section, make it safe. And so that's what I said when we got to that 36-week point. Let us have the cesarean section, let me know that he's going to be born safe. At this point though, they started detecting that I had a slightly higher blood pressure, so there's an element of preeclampsia going on. So they were monitoring me as well as monitoring baby. So a week later I came back in again at 37 weeks to have my blood pressure checked, and it was high, but it was within the range that they don't need to offer me any medication, they don't need to get baby out sooner. But they did want to check on me again, so they booked me in about 4 days later, and I would have been about 37 plus 6. But later that night, at 37 plus 3, I had a little trickle of water, and being pregnant, being very sleep deprived, I didn't think anything of it, and it wasn't until my husband had said, do you think that maybe that could have been your waters? So we contacted the team, the midwifery team, and they asked me to come in. So I'm going to leave it there because talking about labour is another story all to itself. So hopefully you'll follow that in the next part of this instalment. If you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section, and I will try to enjoy this hot chocolate.